Hi guys, welcome back to Taylor, and today I'll be showing you an NDB hold entry and one lap around the pattern using an old FAA written exam question. Okay, so here's the question. You received the following clearance. Taylor 1 Alpha cleared to the Golf November NDB, hold northeast on the 040 bearing from the NDB, left turns. At station passage, you note the indications in the figure below. What is the recommended procedure to enter the hold pattern? A. Teardrop only, B. Parallel only, or C. Direct only. So let's first check out the scenario in the sim. We're inbound to the Golf November NDB on a heading of 055. This matches the direction indicator reading in the question. You'll also see that the ADF needle is pointing directly upwards. That's because we're on a direct track to the station with zero wind. The ADF needle indication that you're given in the question is irrelevant, because it's given at station passage and therefore it's unreliable. What is relevant is the heading of the aircraft as it crosses the NDB, as this determines the hold entry. Now the hold instruction was to hold northeast on the 040 bearing from the NDB with left turns. This gives us a 220 inbound course to the NDB and a 040 outbound on the hold. We'll be crossing the NDB on a heading of 055. If you need some time to work out the hold entry, feel free to pause the video here. I do have a more in-depth video on hold entries, which you can check out, which I'll link at the end of the video. So let's use the trick on the direction indicator to work out the hold entry. So we're going to put a horizontal line on the DI. I'm going to raise the left side by 20 degrees and lower the right side by 20 degrees. That's because this is a left-hand turn hold, so we need to reverse the normal procedure. We then put the vertical line going up on the DI, and then we'll look for the outbound bearing of the hold, which is 040, which falls in the teardrop sector. So this is what our hold entry is going to look like. After crossing the NDB, we need to take up a heading that's 30 degrees greater than the outbound heading for the hold, so 070 in this case. This is a zero wind example, but adjustments would normally be made for wind. So what are we waiting for? Let's do it. So we're now over the NDB and making a right turn to a heading of 070, which is our teardrop entry heading. Now we've leveled the wings, we're going to start the timer and we're going to fly outbound for 1 minute. Now bear in mind that the picture that I've put on the map here is much larger than the actual pattern that we're going to be doing, and I've just done that so that it's easier to see. Now, even though NDBs are dying out in some parts of the world, they're still quite prevalent in Europe, and this type of tracking is very useful for developing your instrument scan. I've increased the video speed to 1.5 times normal speed here, and what I'm doing is I'm just putting the heading bug round to the inbound for the hold for 220, and we're approaching the minute now. Okay, so we're back on normal speed now, and now what we're doing is a rate 1 turn to the left to the inbound of the hold, which is 220 in this case. So 220 will be the heading and the track because we're in a zero wind situation. Now you'll notice that as we start to make this left turn, the relative bearing indicator is pointing towards the NDB and currently showing a relative bearing of around 120 degrees off to the left. Now as this turn progresses and we get closer to the inbound track, we'll want to see the heading bug and the head of the needle on the relative bearing indicator start to sync up and be in a similar position on the direction indicator as the needle's pointing on the relative bearing indicator. And you're starting to see that happen now. So with about 60 degrees to go, we can see that it's looking pretty sensible. And then once we get to about 50 degrees to go, which is about now, you can see they're pretty much synced up now because we're almost on the inbound track. And then with about 30 degrees to go, they are looking pretty good, and we've got a 30 degrees relative bearing to the left, which is looking good. And we should be good to just level the wings there at 220, and you'll see that the relative bearing there is pointing directly upwards at 0 degrees, which means the NDB is right on our nose. I'm not going to lie, that went much better than I was expecting it to. Now in real life there's an error on the ADF called ADF dip. Now what that does is it causes the needle to lean towards the direction that you're turning, and for these kind of angles of bank that we're using here it will be about 10 degrees, so we'd have to take that into account during the turn, but unfortunately it doesn't seem to be very well modelled in the simulator here. So now we're established on the inbound, all we need to do is not let that needle drift and continue tracking inbound until the needle reverses, and then we know that we've passed the station. Now we'll continue inbound, and it'll be rude not to go around the hold once. Now we're established, so let's do it. So we're just coming up to the station now. You'll see the needle starts to get a little bit confused, and then it'll reverse around. There it goes. So now we've passed the station, we need to start a rate 1 turn to the left, and then we'll turn to the outbound track, and in this case with the zero wind is going to be 040. And I've just increased the video speed so that we get round the turn here. Okay, we're approaching the end of the turn now. We'll go back to normal speed, and we're about to roll out onto that 040 heading. And we know we're abeam the NDB when we've got a 90 degree to the left indication on the ADF there, which we've got, so we're going to reset and start the timer. And we'll continue outbound now for 1 minute in zero wind conditions, and then we can make the turn to the inbound. So as we approach the end of the outbound leg, we want the relative bearing to show around 30 degrees off of the tail, and that shows that we're in a good position to be turning to the inbound. Okay, there's the minute. Now we start that rate 1 turn to the left again, and now we're going to keep an eye on the relative bearing. So I'm going to switch the heading bug around to the inbound heading, and you'll see at the moment the relative bearing showing about 90 degrees off to the left, which is about what we'd expect at this stage. And there's the heading bug is set now, and you'll see that the head of the needle and the heading bug are relatively synced up, and we've got around 50 degrees to go with about the same on the relative bearing there, about 30 degrees to go with about the same on the relative bearing, and about 20 degrees to go. It looks good as well, so that should hit the top when we roll out on that 220 heading. And there we go, we're now established once again on the inbound, and we could just continue doing this until we receive a further clearance. Well, thanks for watching guys, I hope you found it useful. If you did, please like and subscribe. I know that the NDBs aren't the most up-to-date thing to be practicing with, but they really do help you develop your instrument scan. So have fun practicing with your NDBs, and I'll see you in the next video.